One club. One season. 4 ways. Can I answer once and for all, what is the best Moneyball metric? Let's head back to the beginning of FM26's cycle. I set out to find a single formula to discover players undervalued by the market. In fact, we tried 4. The entertainers, the grafters, the controllers, and the shithouses. And now it's time to put them head to head. So here we are, January 2026. I'm looking for a job in Spain because I haven't done one there yet. We have 2 enticing options, Girona and Villarreal. Relegated in real life, Girona are perhaps overperforming, and Mikel has now jumped ship for Benfica. An ageing squad, chock full of loans, they seem perfect for a big rebuild, but they're also part of the City group, and that kinda gives me the ick. Villarreal, on the other hand, finished 3rd in real life, and so are definitely underperforming, leading to Marcelinho's dismissal. There was something romantic about the Yellow Submarine, although one player really spoils that vibe. The clincher for me, however, is the Montelivi. With 17,000 capacity in game, it firmly cements Girona as a small club with a limited ceiling. This is ultimately the perfect conditions for Moneyball, a club with limitations who has to think outside the box to compete against more illustrious opponents. Now it's midway through the first season, and we're not going to start the rebuild until the summer. For now, it's about gathering data. So I've set them up in a relatively neutral Christmas tree, a little bit of deep build-up in possession, and a low-blocking 4-4-2 out of possession. Otherwise, no player instructions. I just want to see how they get on with little interference. And they got on well. Vladislav Vanat in particular was impressive, scoring 11 goals in the second half of the season, including a brace against high-flying Mallorca. Thomas Lamar added 7 goals and 4 assists, whilst Abel Ruiz perhaps scored our most important goal, a 95th minute winner against Real Madrid. Otherwise, we lost to the teams we were expected to lose against, Atletico, Sevilla, Barcelona, and some teams we weren't expected to lose against, like Real Oviedo and Elche. In 22 games we picked up 43 points and secured a 6th place finish in Europa League football. It's a solid start, and here's where the fun begins. It's data time, and as we've got 4 different formulas to calculate, that's a lot of columns to export. I've done this for players over 1,000 minutes in Spain, England, France, Germany, Netherlands, Italy, and Portugal. I've also gone back to the end of 2025 and done the same for Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, and Uruguay. This will help me for transfer targets, 9,000 players, some who might actually be affordable. Now I'll be touching on each metric in more detail as we progress through the video, but they've been weighted based on league reputation. So a player in La Liga will have their output multiplied by 1, whilst a player in Chile's Primera B will have their output multiplied by 0.6. Everything has then been measured as a percentile, ranking them against those who play in the same position. What it doesn't help me with is my players. They spent half a season under Mikel, half a season under me, so let's deal with that. I also exported data at the time I took over in the job, which allows me to subtract those numbers from their end of season numbers to see how they performed in the second half of the season. This means some of my players will have 2 scores, one pre-Musterman, one peri-Musterman, so I'll take the highest of each to judge them. So here is the squad. Ter Stegen was phenomenal, but he's going back to Barca, so not in our considerations. Gazzaniga was the backup and looks solid, but he didn't play enough for us to assess. At right back, Martinez was the only to play enough minutes, a homegrown lad who looks well suited to all possible approaches. Rincon's another loanee, so we'll consider him gone. At centre back, things look awful. Vitor Rice is quality, but he returns to Man City. Daley Blind was pretty good too, but he's already agreed to join Ajax. Witzel's off to Brugge. David Lopez is retiring, leaving us with the underwhelming Alejandro Francis and Antal Yakubishvili, who is on loan at too low a level to assess. It would be great to count on Ladislav Krejci, but Wolves met the obligation to buy criteria. At left back, Alex Moreno is phenomenal for everything we want to do. Mitchell Bakker is pretty good too, but his wages means a permanent signing is unlikely. We've got a lot of midfielders. Players like Artero, Karuma and Van der Beek didn't play enough to assess. Fran Beltran appears to be the star man here, suited to most approaches. Even Martin is pretty darn good himself, maybe just a little worse. Unai doesn't really stand out, but seems like he could be useful in some situations, whilst John Solis is due to return from his loan at Birmingham, where he showed he might be okay in a couple of approaches, and truly awful in others. We've got even more attacking midfielders. Echeverry and Lemar are loanees, so as good as they may have been, they're gone. Viktor Sagankov is the only player with enough minutes at the club and certainly looks useful. Min-Soo Kim impressed on loan at Andorra and should get some chances. Yasser Asprilla, however, is the wildcard. He did play enough minutes, just in the Turkish Super League, which is not loaded. Then up front we have Fanat, who certainly impressed in our first few months in charge. Abel Ruiz looks good too, except for one approach, whilst Dorda Camera had a pretty solid time of things at Tenerife. Old man Stuani is hanging up his boots. That's a lot of players already on their way out, and a few more who might need offloading. To do this rebuild we have just under 10 million euros, plus 15% of whatever we raise from sales. That figure is low because we're 15 million euros in the red. The club lost 20 million over the course of last season, so whilst we have a wage budget of 1.1 million euros per week, I'm keen to get that under 800,000 so we can work towards being more sustainable. This feels challenging to do just once, let alone 4 times. 1st of June 2026. Each save starts here, and I'll be playing them in parallel, so I'll get through the transfer window and pre-season with each club and stop. Then each month, one at a time. This is a multiverse, or a mustaverse. No, that doesn't work. Let's just crack on. Let's start with the entertainers, developed with USL Dunkirk in France's Ligue 2. The premise, as the name implies, is entertainment. Goalkeepers who make spectacular saves, defenders who throw themselves into last-ditch tackles, players who take on the opposition and win, and shots. Lots and lots of shots. So that's what I measured. Saves tipped and penalties saved. Shots blocked and key tackles. Progressive passes and dribbles. And open play key passes and shots. But with risk comes frustration, offsides and possession lost. Each index was then measured as a percentile, and each position weighted those indices differently to give us a final X-factor score. Tactically it was simple. We played narrow to keep players in close proximity. I encouraged dribbling and allowed creative freedom. Out of possession we compacted play with a high defensive line and active pressing. What started as a 4-2-3-1 became a 3-4-3 to give our wingbacks more freedom, and then became a different 3-4-3 to get our attacking midfielders closer to the goal. And boy was it good. Whether it was the audacious goal scoring of Enzo Bardet, or the dazzling footwork of Eddie Silvestre, we put on a show. We earned promotion at the first time of asking. In came Bruni and Simba, a free transfer from FCV Dender in Belgium to keep us afloat. And keep us afloat he did. 17 goals helped us to a 10th place finish. Sinali Diamande arrived on a free from Auxerre, securing our defence to give our attackers more freedom. That pushed us to the next level, a 4th placed finish and Champions League football secured. And Simba was out, replaced by Eren Chanyardimchi for 2.1 million. He'd go on to score 37 goals in all competitions as we would once again repeat our 4th place finish. The best was saved for last. 600k Lasse Rosenboom arrived from Holsten Kiel, and his 15 assists were the catalyst for a title challenge that went right up to the wire. Only for a 90th minute equaliser to break our hearts. From Ligue 2 to just 1 point off PSG in 5 seasons is pretty good, but can this approach catapult Girona to the top of La Liga? I've got 4 keepers with no data, so let's move on the oldies and find ourselves a starter. Bournemouth took both Blanco and Gazzaniga from us for a combined 2.3 million. At fullback we're good. Martinez and Moreno were perfect for this approach. I might not have enough data on Jordana, but for backup that's fine. We do need depth on the left though. Centre-back is slim pickings. Alejandro Francis' 56 is not good enough, so he's been sold to Al Hazem for 10 million. That leaves us just Antal Yakubishvili, who's playing at too low a level for us to assess. I need reinforcements here. Midfield looks pretty solid, with Beltran and Martin elite. Unahi is a serviceable backup. Solis sucks, but that doesn't stop Al Nassr from giving us 58 million for his services. Van der Beek's wages are too high to justify keeping, so he's gone to Ipswich on loan with a mandatory 6.5 million fee. Artero and Karuma have been loaned out for game time. Behind the striker, Sigankov and Mintsu Kim look like strong options. Asprilla can get a chance as Sigankov's backup, but Justin, Misahui and Roca will be loaned out. Porto has interest, so he's been sold to Real Valladolid for 1.4 million. Up front, Vanat is the clear starter. The camera did well at a lower level and will back him up. Ruiz is just straight trash here. He's gone to Southampton for 22.5 million. Before I bring anyone in, I need to tweak the tactic. I'm going to shift this central trio forward, drop the wingbacks deeper and split out the wingers. A classic 4-3-3. That gives us a squad planner like this. I need a goalkeeper, 3 centre-backs, a left-back, 3 midfielders and a left winger. Actually, we need 4 midfielders. Al Hilal have turned Ivan Martin's head and he's now Saudi bound for 45 million. That's 140 million euros raised in total, although we only get 15% of that back in our transfer budget. Let's start in goal, where Ignacio Diarra Barrena is my choice. Exceptional XGP and X Factor for a mere 2.3 million and 23.5k per week. At centre-back I've bought in Deportivo's Danny Barthia for 2.2 million and 25k per week. He'll be partnered by Alex Pastor, a 775k arrival from Malaga on 15 grand per week, backed up by Sassuolo's Ruan Tresoldi, a free transfer, 18.5 grand per week. At left back we use one of our 2 remaining non-EU slots on Matthias de Rittis. Signed for 325k from San Lorenzo, he'll earn less than 8 grand per week and back up Alex Moreno. We need lots of midfielders, so I'll start with Bilbao's Benat Guerrena-Barria. 550k, 14.5 grand per week, he'll be the fringe backup. AVS SAD's Pedro Lima is next, taking our final non-EU slot for 1.5 million and 9.5 grand per week. His 93 rating matches the next man, Evan Hill, signed for 2 million from Las Palmas and 24.5k per week. He's our more attacking option. And rounded off with the 97 rated Santiago Colombato. He arrived for 1.7 million and 18k per week. Finally a left winger, and that man is Tondea's Makan Aiko. He's our most expensive signing at 2.8 million, but earns just 12 grand per week. Our squad planner is looking much healthier, 2 players for each position, although I imagine as the season develops, who is considered the starter and who is considered the backup is likely to change. All in all, I spent a little over 14 million, which I think is pretty decent. Our wage budget is down to under 700k, which is also far better than initially planned. We're off to a good start, but let's see how things panned out elsewhere in the Mustaverse. Still doesn't work. The Grafters, a team built around running and running and running. Werder Bremen was the testing ground, as we sought to cover every blade of grass. The formula is the simplest and made up of 2 components. The running index measures distance covered and sprints per 90. The engagement index looks at tackles, headers and pressures attempted. Then those are combined to give us an overall effort score. A 4-4-2 diamond with intensity maxed out. High tempo and wide, it's about keeping the game in perpetual transition. Once we lose the ball, it's about winning it back as quickly and aggressively as possible. Defensively, it's a 4-3-3, with the strikers defending the flanks and the AM leading the press. It was a success right from the start, depending on how you measure success. Games were frenetic and tight, but we came out on top most of the time. A 3rd place finish in our first season is a pretty solid foundation. Lasse Rosenboom arrived once again, but it was Martin Kars signed for 4.7 million from St. Pauli, and his 37 goal contributions that gave us the finishing touch we were so desperately missing. Not quite enough to secure a Bundesliga though. Depth was now the priority. Abubakar Barry arrived on a free transfer to improve our pressing. That's not going to show up much on the highlights though, where it was once again all about cars, 27 goals, 7 assists, and the Bundesliga title. And a move to West Ham. Benedikt Hollerbach, the €8.75 million replacement. And he was just as good at scoring goals, even better at creating for others. And though it came down to the final day, we defended our league title. The €4.2 million signing of Phil Harris was not meant to be that significant, signed to be a backup, which he mostly was. But whilst Hollerbach and Kiki Top fired us to our third successive Bundesliga, it was Harris who won us the Champions League. By the end of the 5 years, we were unstoppable. But heavy metal football is built for the Bundesliga. Can it work in the sunnier climates of Catalonia? Nothing changes in regards to goalkeepers, and once again Bournemouth signed both Gazzaniga and Blanco. And no changes to our defensive situation either. Francis still isn't good enough and is off to Al Hazem. All 3 fullbacks will play a part. In midfield, John Solis stays. I'd say a score around 60 is my cutoff, so he'll likely be a rotation player along with Unahi. Al Hilal swooped for Ivan Martin, and Van der Beek is once again sold, this time straight to Osasuna for $7 million. For the AM role we've got Sagankov. Kim falls below the threshold, so he'll be sent out on loan, and Asprilla will be the backup. I couldn't get a buyer for Porto this time, and he started getting Mardy, so I released him. Like Kim, Dorda Camera isn't quite ready, but thankfully this approach is more suited to Abel Ruiz, so he stays. That gives us a squad planner that looks a little like this. I need the same number of defensive reinforcements, 3 midfielders, and 2 strikers. Our new goalkeeper will be Racing Santander's Joaquin Ezquieta. Effort score doesn't really apply to keepers, but he had the highest score whilst also achieving a positive XGP ratio and being affordable. 1.5 million, 25k per week. The 81 rated Mies Hilgers is our first centre-back through the door, a free transfer from Twente. He's likely to back up Manu Fernandez, signed for 800k from Celta Vigo and 26.5 grand per week. Brian Medina is our left-footed option, arriving from Tondela for 1.7 million and 14.5k per week. He takes up our remaining non-EU slot. I've gone big for our backup left-back. Pablo Perez cost us a whopping 65k from Atletico Madrid and will earn 5 grand a week. Our first midfield signing is the fringe option. Real Oviedo's Alberto Del Moral's performance is modest, but good enough to be a backup. 950k, 20 grand per week. Santa Clara's Pedro Ferreira should slot straight into the lineup, however, a free transfer on 13.5k per week. Pele Clement was also a free transfer and scored an incredible 98. He'll earn 15.5 grand per week. The free transfers continue up front, where Lonz's Taylor Livambo will provide depth and just 5.5 grand per week, whilst Moretzi is our big signing, a 2.4 million arrival from Almeria with a 99 score. 2 players for each position sees us well set. With a little discernible difference between Vernat and Ruiz, I don't know who will emerge as Moretzi's main partner, and I'm keen to see how the Moreno-Perez battle develops. A more modest outlay of 7.5 million this time, and just 65 million in sales. That gives us a wage spend around 800k. That makes sense. More senior players made the grade, more youth players were loaned out. We still did a good job of turning profit and reducing the wage budget. Right, on to the next one. The controllers, in a quest to bring glory back to Juventus, and doing so by absolutely dominating possession. Not sterile possession though, it's about territory, pinning the opposition in their own half and suffocating them anytime we do lose the ball. Where the Grafters was the simplest formula, the controllers is without doubt the most complicated. A creation index which measures expected assists against average XA per chance created. A scoring index which measures goals against average shot quality. A pressure index which measures pressures completed against pressure success rate. And a possession 1 index which measures possession 1, all then converted to percentiles. Finally, there's a retention rate, which is possession lost against passes attempted, then inverted. The indices are then weighted depending on the player's position and multiplied by the retention rate. The final number is converted to a percentile to get that player's control score. So here's the tactic: a high-tempo, short-passing 4-3-3 that discourages dribbling, crossing and shooting. Out of possession, it's a high-intensity 4-2-4 to win that ball back quickly and aggressively. Now, Juventus are already a good team. There's no real prize for bringing them success, even if that eluded Igor Tudor and Luciano Spalletti in real life. But I could never have predicted how awesome Khéphren Thuram would be. 21 goals from midfield secured us Serie A at the first time of asking. Manuel Lazzari arrived for $2.5 million, and the 31-year-old grabbed 11 assists as we defended our title successfully. With Yildiz leaving for Liverpool, €22 million Lucas Beltran led our line, although as Luis Openda as our wide forward who scored the goals, as we completed the three-peat. Valentin Carboni was the next middle-of-the-road forward through the door for $14.5 million as we look to build on domestic success in Europe. An unbeaten season in the league capped off with a Champions League victory over Barca. As I said, winning with Juventus isn't really an accomplishment, but clearing €280 million worth of debt in 4 years was. Can Girona, though, attract the calibre of players necessary to make this work? The same situation as always with the keepers, except this time Gazzaniga went to Arsenal. Same situation with the fullbacks, but different with centre-backs. Alejandro Francis' 67 is enough to keep him around and allows us to not have to sign a Brazilian defenders. In midfield, Solis could actually be a starter. Unai can't though, so he's gone to Al Nassr for $28.5 million. Even Martin ends up at Al Ahly this time round, and Van der Beek at Real Betis. On the wings, Kim is back in contention. At 92, this is his best rated system. Sigankov unfortunately falls short of expectations and is sold to Al Hilal for $29 million, whilst Porto goes to Real Valladolid for $1.5 million. Up front, Vanat's 93 leads the way, but both Camara and Ruiz are good enough. We don't need 3 strikers though, so Ruiz is off to Nice for $22.5 million. So once again, our squad planner has a lot of holes. A goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, 1 left-back, 4 midfielders, a right winger and a left winger. Our new goalkeeper is Marco Blev. Blev? Again, control score isn't really for keepers, but he's above average, has a positive XGP and is affordable. 1.3 million and 8.75k per week. At centre-back, Genoa's Alessandro Marcandelli was a recommendation in my video on Moneyball bargains. He's perfect for this approach. 1.8 million, 30k per week. Armando Obsipo is arguably better, signed for 3.5 million from PSV, 28.5k per week. Malaga's Dani Sanchez will be our backup left-back, a 600k arrival, earning 15k per week. In midfield, let's start with the defensive options. Justin Smith arrives for 975k and 13 grand per week from Espanyol. He'll be the backup to Real Oviedo's Leander Dendoncker, a sensational 99 rating and costs just 325k and 22 grand per week. For more attacking options, I've signed Paul Fortuny from Real Madrid. On loan last season in Portugal, he arrives on a free transfer and 15k per week. Ahead of him is Heracles Jan Zambarek, a €2 million arrival on 16.5k per week. Racing Santander's Suleiman Kamara is our new left winger. He arrives for 1.4 million and 14.75k per week. Finally, Kaiki for the right wing spot. The former Man City winger will cost 3.9 million and 13.5k. Will cost because he's currently on loan, so won't be joining us until January. So welcome Chris Ramos, a perfect 100 rating. The Cadiz striker signs for 4 million and 30k per week, which means our squad depth looks like this. Vanat will play as a wide forward on the right, at least until Kaiki arrives, then we might try and send Camara out on loan. Otherwise, we look pretty set. Our most expensive transfer window yet, 20 million spent, including Kaiki. 135 mil recouped though, so it's not as if I were reckless. Our wage bill, however, is the lowest yet, 630 grand per week. On paper, this feels like our best chance of success, but FM isn't played on paper, it's played on spreadsheets, and we've still got one more to go. The Shithouses, an homage to the dark arts, breaking up play with tacky fouls, Italian-inspired deep defending, explosive counterattacks, all put to the test with WSL2's Durham. So I measured the dirty, that's fouls minus offsides against booking rate. I measured the reactive, that's blocks, clearances, interceptions and key tackles, multiplied by how frequently they perform those actions. And then there's the cheat, that's free kicks won against all the actions that end a possession. And again, that's weighted differently depending on position. Okay, that might be the most confusing one. But as complicated as it looks, it's essentially the same as the controllers, quantity multiplied by quality. Tactically, it's the most high tempo and direct. When we have the ball, we just want to hoof it forward. Defensively, however, it's the most passive. We run back, maintain our shape, and foul. It's a 3-4-3 in possession and a 5-3-2 out of it. The wide outlet winger is really just a striker splitting as wide as possible. As a reactive setup, defensive roles change depending on the opposition formation. This was, without doubt, the most challenging save of the four. We were dogged defensively, but offered little attacking threat, as we finished respectably mid-table in the first season. And then we signed Ella Kinsit for free. The former Man United youngster became the heartbeat of our midfield. She didn't necessarily help us score any more goals, the exact same amount as the season prior, but with just 12 conceded, we were WSL2 champions. Our next big signing, also free, was Arsenal's Jessie Gale, a youth international tasked with keeping us in the WSL, and that she most definitely did, as we secured a shock top half finish. We could spend money, and €61,000 bought us Hawa Singare. Signed from Sassuolo, we now had a proper striker to lead the line, and with 22 goals in all competitions, we finished 6th again. The final piece of the puzzle was Abigail Lafayette. The 34.5k left-back gave us the creative spark on the flanks to supply Hawa Singare in our quest for European football, where we fell short. On the surface, that looks a little underwhelming, but to push the top four with such a small club is quite the feat. Girona has a higher floor, so it'll be interesting to see how far it can take us. You know the drill with keepers, off to Bournemouth for a combined 2.3 million. You know the drill with wingbacks, although this is a step down in performance from Arnau Martinet, but something to keep an eye on. At centre-back, Francis survives once again, which is a relief because we need 6 in total. Midfield is where things get interesting. Beltran's 70 is the best of the bunch, the rest are all surplus to requirements. Martin to Al Ahly, Unahi to Al Nassr, Van der Beek to Real Betis, and Solis to Brest, but only on loan, no 58 mil this time. Behind the strikers, Sigankov is ill-suited for this approach, so he's off to Al Hilal for 29 million, and Porto has been released this time before he can stir up trouble. This is Ruiz's best style yet. He'll lead the line, but Van Aert falls a long way short. He's been sold to Nice for 16.5 mil. Here's the squad planner, possibly the worst it's looked so far. 1 goalkeeper, 1 left-back, 4 centre-backs, 3 midfielders, an attacking midfielder and a left winger. Our new keeper is Clermont-Foot's Theo Gavage, 700k and 22 grand a week, and injured 5 days after arriving. So we turn to Guilherme Fernandes, better XGP, worse at the dark arts, €1 million from Real Betis, 23.5k per week. Aruca's Javi Sanchez is our first centre-back, a solid backup on a free transfer and 24 grand a week. Next is Munster's Antonio Tikvic, a huge jump up, 1.4 million and 22k per week. Maastricht's Out Koemans has the same rating but was cheaper, 425k and just 6.5 grand a week. Then finally, 99 rated Marco Moreno, 1.3 million from Eibar, 24 grand a week. At left back, Real Sociedad's Unai Zagote, a free transfer will provide relief on 17k per week. Our midfield reinforcement starts with Pedro Sarr, a free transfer from Penafiel on 8.5k per week. Just a little bit better is Vitoria's Dudu, but much dearer at 1.8 million and 15k per week. We finish with Magdeburg's Falco Mikel, a 375 grand arrival earning 18.75k per week. Behind the striker we welcome Sonny Carey. The Charlton man cost 2.3 million and 25k per week, and we finish it off with a perfect 100 on the wing. Kaiserslaughter's Faride Aladou is the best left winger out there and available for free. A lot of these guys will go straight into the starting lineup, and the squad looks strong across the board. That's 12 players in for 9.3 million and 128 mil recouped. Not too bad. With a 630 grand per week wage spend, it's our joint lowest. This feels the most ragtag, a bunch of misfits thrown together, and in that sense, it's probably the most Moneyball. It's also the lowest predicted of the 4 squads, although between 11th and 13th, that's really just splitting hairs. But what could the teams have looked like if money was no object? That's something I cover in the director's cut, along with my approach to selling players available to members and patrons. Now those lineups are just something I thought was interesting, to show the best players in this save according to each approach. But whilst they're not part of this experiment, there is a 5th team. The benchmark, because we need to measure our performance against something, right? So I resigned at the beginning of the summer, and Racing Santander's Jose Alberto took the job. Not a single player sold. Chris Richards arrived on loan from Crystal Palace, Stefan Porsche on loan from Como, Lorient's June Hugonet signed for 2.4 million, and Colm's Rasmus Carstensen for 1.7 million. 4 signings, all defenders, and that earns them the best prediction of the lot. Look, I shouldn't be surprised that FM rates its own transfer dealings higher than my weird mathematical nonsense, but it does piss me off. I want to prove them wrong, and that will be for the next episode when we put it to the test. See you then.